Hi guys, my name is Manya and I'm a recent graduate from Sri Ram College of Commerce. I'll be joining McKinsey and Company as a business analyst this fall. This video is primarily to help you understand what the placement process at SRCC looks like. And I'll specifically be speaking about the placement process for McKinsey and the other consulting firms in the cohort. Post that, I'm going to deep dive into what my experience was throughout the process and what my learnings were, so that you don't have to repeat those same mistakes and possibly help you out during your placement process. So, like I mentioned, I will be dividing the video into three parts. The first part is going to speak about the placement process, the various stages, and my job profile, my company. The second part is going to speak about my experience, and thirdly, we'll talk about the learnings. So, speaking about what management consulting or McKinsey does and what my role there would be, McKinsey and Company is the oldest and the largest of the top three management consulting firms, which are McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain and Company, which are commonly known as the MBDs. So, as a business analyst, I'll be working with other people in the team, such as the consultants, the associates, and the engagement managers, to identify different problems and recommend solutions to the problems which are brought in by the client. So that is primarily what we will be doing. Talking about the placement process of SR. So the placement process at SR is divided into two phases. The first phase starts around August end or September and lasts till November, December. And the second phase starts around February and ends towards April or May. So the first phase is focused on the consulting firms, while the second phase is focused on the finance firms. We also have recruiters coming in from other sectors, which are spread across the two phases. And the like I mentioned, so the companies start coming in the month of August or September. So during the various processes, the common stages include CV shortlisting, case studies, aptitude tests, HR interviews, technical interviews, etc. Speaking specifically about the consulting companies, they do not involve any other rounds such as group discussion or a case study round. The major process at these consulting firms is usually a CV shortlisting round, which is followed by a non evaluative buddy round. And then you have the final set of interviews which happen. The number of the interviews and the structure of the interviews depends on the firm that you're interviewing with. However, like I mentioned, for the other companies, you can have various stages in the process, such as the group discussion round, case study round, where you have to submit an assignment, sort of say, which could be an Excel assignment, a presentation assignment, any case study for that matter. You could also have a video submission round. The other stages could be an aptitude test, etc. Now, talking specifically about MBDs, so for BCG, Bain, and other consulting companies like Carney, you do not have any other round apart from CV shortlisting, buddy round, and final interviews. However, for McKinsey, we did have an additional round, which was a gamified test. Once you make a shortlist, that is when you become eligible for it. There are no technical skills per se that are tested. It's more of a number crunching game where you need to solve the given problem statement in a specified amount of time. So it's more about how structurally you can think and how fast you can do it. That's what the game is about. Now, talking about the other stages, CV shortlisting. So, usually around 20 to 25 people are shortlisted out of around 600 to 700 people who apply. Post that, the buddy round lasts for around 10 to 12 days, where you're allotted a buddy from the company who is usually a consultant or a manager level person who helps you understand the company in a better way, helps you understand the organization, the culture, the work, etc., and also helps you out with cases, right? And the final stage is the interviews. So for all of these companies, you usually have 3 to 4 rounds of interview. And then at SR, to be eligible to give the final rounds of interview, which happen on day 2, you should pass on from the day 1. That is, you should clear day 1 to reach day 2. So day 1 is eliminative, and then you have day 2. These interviews for companies like BCG and Bain usually revolve around case studies and do not give a lot of importance to HR or the personal experience. However, at McKinsey, they have a 50% weightage. That is, 50% of the weightage is given to the case study part of it, while the remaining 50% is the HR part of it. So that's how the placement process for these top consulting firms usually looks like. Now, I'm going to speak about what my experience was. The first question that I have here is if I planned for placement from the very beginning or if I decided later. So honestly speaking, placement was not my goal. I came to SR, I wanted to get on from pass on these 3 years and then start doing law. So that was my initial thoughts. However, I was very open to exploring, and I think first year I was not focused on placements and I wanted to try out different things. So I joined multiple societies, did a couple of internships to realize where my interest lies. And I think by the end of first year, I honestly sort of realized that I do not want to take up law long term. And I enjoyed strategy and consulting as field. So I think towards my second year is when I realized I want to take up placements, and I started working towards my profile. And I think that is one learning that I would also like to give to all of you, that while you join college, don't be very very stringent on what you want to achieve, because I think we are not aware of different things that the college has to offer before we join it, right? There are plethora of things, and once you start exploring is truly when you will be able to realize uh, which is what is something that you enjoy, right? Don't fall into the herd mentality of joining XYZ clubs or going for an XYZ placement just because it has a good brand name or it's offering you XYZ package, right? Make sure that you know what you're doing, and make sure that you enjoy what you're doing, and that is why you're doing that, right? Just do not do it because others are doing it. Second question is about my placement preparation and when did I start doing it. So like I mentioned that the first step in almost all the companies is CV shortlisting, right? And CV is something that you cannot build overnight. So unconsciously your placement preparation starts long before the placement processes actually begin. That is around a year back or so when you start building your profile. So to end up getting a CV shortlist from these top consulting firms, they look for spikes, right? Which are something that sets you apart from the rest of the batch. So for the various sections in CV, you need to have things that are unique to you or that differentiate you, right? And for that, you need around a year to help you understand which bucket is going to be a strong point, where do you want to keep adding stuff which is still weak. So uh, again, so that's what I would say, that my placement preparation first year was more about exploring, but I would not say what I did there did not help me get a CV shortlist, right? Those were also the things that went on in my CV. So whatever activities you pick in college, make sure they're adding value to you and not to your CV. If they're adding value to you, they'll also add value to your CV. So so CV wala part that starts long back, but the actual placement preparation, what you need to do is to for consulting firms specifically, focus on case interviews, right? For case interviews, you need a solid 1.5 to 2 months to structure your brain that way, where you start breaking down problems and start thinking more structurally, logically, and break down bigger things into very smaller parts, very minute parts, right? So for this, I started around June or July. And then you also get those 12 days in the buddy round where you can extensively do cases to come into that case studies wala mode, if I might add. And if you're aiming for other companies, finance companies, etc., they might end up having an aptitude test or questions such as puzzles or number crunching in the interviews, right? So make sure you keep working on those skills long before. That is not something you'll be able to do 2 days before the interview. So those aptitude tests usually have questions very similar to entrance exams, something that you might have done in exams such as IPMAT or CUET, but very very similar to exams such as SCAT, right? A level down, but similar set of questions. So for aptitude tests and CV, you will have to work for a longer time. Case interviews, etc., you can do around 2 months back. And HR questions similarly. It's about how you tell your story, right? So you do not need a lot of time to do that, but you need to give time to structure your thoughts so that you're not going and ranting in front of the interviewer. My overall strategy for the placements is the next question. So I would suggest be honest to yourself. I mean, might sound very cringe, but that is something that is going to get you through the process, right? You keep changing your personality for every interview depending on the company, and you might end up getting nothing, right? So make sure you're well prepared for the interviews, but do not lose out on hope even if you do not get selected. Keep going. And also realize one thing, right? It's not just that you did not make it to the company. Also think from an angle, was that company meant for you? Because these are long-term engagements you're looking for. It should not be the fact that only you are adding value to the company. The company should also be adding value to it. So make sure you evaluate the company, you make sure that you align with the role that it is offering you, and only then decide to go for it. Just again, I would repeat, do not fall into that herd mentality of doing things because everybody around you is doing or aiming for it, right? What might be a dream company for you might not be the dream company for many, and that's completely okay. What were the weak points in my profile? So I think if I have to compare bucket wise, I think my profile, what I considered weak, was my internship section. The reason being, most of the folks in my batch focused on getting brand names, right? I did not have that because I was more towards the startup ecosystem. So most of my internships were done in Series A startups or VCs, right? And at that time, I did not realize if these were good enough as compared to the other people. I still don't know. So that was one thing. And I think second could have been the ECAs, right? I did not do much apart from what I was doing at college. So I joined a lot of clubs, did a lot of internships, had multiple case counts, but I still feel that it was mostly very, very academic sort of thing. And I did not have a lot of, say, extracurriculars in the form of singing, dancing, sports, etc., which I thought are needed in ECA section, right, to give it a spike. The next question is how depressing the placement season was and how did I deal with rejections. So hopefully I do not have to do that in my placement process. But in the internship season, I did fail quite a couple of times. I ended up in the final round for a lot of companies, did not make it through. So that time is tough. You start losing out hope on yourself. But I think if you're able to realize why you did not make it is a better way to go about it, right? So if you did not make it through any interview per se, which you were equally excited about, make sure that you sit back and reflect on it. What are the things that could have gone wrong? And try working out on those, right? So very simple examples could have been you were very, very good at the technical part of it, however, did not give a lot of importance to HR questions. And the answers that you give in the interview were not that structured. So what you need to realize here is that placement process are all about how better are you doing compared to others, right? So companies are not looking to hire good folks, the companies are looking to hire the better folks, right? If 10 people are interviewing, even if you're good but XYZ person was better than you, he'll end up getting the position. So make sure you have those you realize what went wrong and practice on that. Apart from that, also to realize where you're going wrong on other aspects, right? Could be your communication skills, could be the actual lack of technical knowledge, could be the lack of interest in the field, which is why you're not able to show that to the recruiter. So make sure just to reflect on it, and I think you'll be good to go. Do not lose out hope. The next is my whole interview experience. So I'll talk about my experience with Mech and Bain. I interviewed with both the firms. So like I mentioned, right, for companies like BCG, Bain, Carney, they do not pay a lot of importance to the HR front, right? The interviews usually just revolve around case studies, and that is how it was for me in case of Bain. In Mech, they give equal importance, right? You have equal set of questions being asked for you for case studies, and that is the case interview part of it and the HR questions. So that was my interview experience, and mostly these are conversational, right? So opposed to how you're going to practice it, right? While you practice it from casebooks, etc., these seem very mechanical, where you ask one thing, the interview gives you one thing, then you put that piece of information into your structure, then give him an output, right? But these are not how actual case interviews would go. So these are more conversational in nature, and these might not end up being like your casebook interviews, and that's okay. All you have to do is just have that conversation with the interviewer and listen to what he or she is saying, put that into thoughts, give your inputs on it, and just try solving the problem or the case together. It's not a one-man work, it's what you want to do as a team there. Then the next question is about my internships. So I had done my summer internship at a venture capital firm, which is Inflection Point Ventures. And I think the experience was surreal, right? So like I mentioned, I had always been into startup ecosystem. My previous internships were also at two startups, Grow Private Limited and the Startup Lab. The internship at VC, I think, added a lot of value per se and was very helpful because the work that you're doing or the soft skills that you're getting from a VC internship were very similar to what I would need in McKinsey. So for example, you're speaking to a lot of clients, you're working on their fundraise, etc. You're preparing presentations, you're having client calls, etc. So I think that way it was very similar to what I might get to do in McKinsey. So that was about my experience. We're coming to the end of the video. The last question is about the learnings and what are the various tips for college placements. So like I've mentioned multiple times throughout the video, I'm going to repeat it again. Make sure you're doing it because you want to do it and not because others are doing it. Secondly, be focused on what you want to achieve, right? Because I think at the end of third year or during your third year, you'll realize that there are multiple things that people want to do, right? Few people might be taking CAT, few people might be taking GMAT, few people might be going for fellowships, few people might be preparing for other competitive exams such as say UPSC, few might be going for consulting and placements, finance placements, etc., right? And you cannot do everything at once. If you can, very well and good. If not, just make sure you prioritize stuff, you know what you want to do when, and to ignore the rest of it, right? If you try achieving all the 10 things at once, you might lose out on what you could have achieved if you would have just focused on that one thing. The other thing would be to start building your profile from the very start, right? If you're focused on placements, do not leave it at the very last moment. Even for case interviews, etc., start doing case prep 2 to 2.5 months in advance. Start building that approach of thinking very structurally, and I think you'll be good to go. Apart from that, for CV, etc., try speaking to a lot of seniors, connect with them, see how it goes. Because connecting with seniors actually helps. It helps you understand the process, the company in detail. Apart from that, if you're truly interested in something which is not placements, go for it. Do not fall into the herd culture. Secondly, even if you're losing out on things, right? If things are not going the way you had planned, just remember things will fall into place eventually, and you're going to end up at a place which is the best for you. All the best for the process.